Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
I'm gonna die surrounded by the biggest idiots in the galaxy.
You're a slacker.
You stupid idiot!
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like, your opinion, man.
Ugh. Idiot.
Game over, man.
Hey, careful
Whoa.
with that Ronnie Millsap. We're downrange.
What's the matter with you?
Feel like a Kentucky Fried Idiot.
Oh, I'll take it from here, nurse.
We're putting the band back together.
Forget it. No way.
We're on a mission from God.
Gentlemen, Ciccolini here may talk like an idiot and look like an idiot, but don't let that fool you. He really is an idiot.
I was going to spend the night assembling a bougie, but this is holding my interest.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. This is episode 28, and we know that you've been waiting for this moment for quite a long time, but finally, Free Range Idiocy has come back to our deep geek on Battlestar Galactica. That's right. We weren't just teasing with that episode on Razor. We're diving back into BSG proper with the first half of the final season. My name is Todd, and with me, as always, you would never guess by looking at him, but he is incredibly adept at both air guitar and Chuck Norris spin kicks. He is the Paul White to my Chris Jericho. Well, it's time to break some walls down. I give you the man they call Tim.
Brother Todd, how we doing this evening?
I kind of scratched my throat on that one. I might have to change that intro a little bit.
Oh boy.
I feel I might have scarred myself.
I've blown a vocal cord.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I am, aside from that, I'm doing all right.
Well,
and,
that's good.
And yourself, sir?
I am well. We are entering into week 10 of lockdown, and we're making it work.
So I'm not even going to comment on that because all that's going to come out of my mouth is hateful words. Do you want to play Name the Tag Team?
You know, I remember when they were together, but I don't remember their name.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, Jericho. Is it Jericho?
Oh, son of a... I thought I had you. I thought it'd be so terribly obvious you would miss it, and I almost made it.
Well, let's be honest here. I mean, it wasn't like you had to add a whole lot of imagination to that name. You know, take Jericho,
yeah,
big show, and there you have it. So.
What I did like was I really didn't. This was after my wrestling watching days, and after and before, really, because since I've watched a little bit of it in the past couple of years here. The funny part was I went back and I watched the themes. I found like the theme music, and it really is just a mashup of Big Show and Jericho's theme music, which I never understood why no one else did that after hearing it. Like, it was beautiful in how just stupid it was. You know, starting off with that, well, and then going into Break the Walls Down.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh,
and then going into, like, and then
it was
rhyming,
just so
like,
thrown together, you know?
Oh, but yet at the same time, Jericho can pull that off.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he just carries it. I mean, look at what he's doing now, or the thing with the scarves or whatever.
Chris Jericho is like the Swiss Army knife of professional wrestling. That man knows how to continually change, remarket himself, gimmick. Just change his gimmick altogether. Take a concept, flip it on its head. I mean,
he is the MacGyver of professional wrestling.
Oh yes, thank you.
Give him some duct tape and like 3 objects. Or actually, you know what? It's almost like whose line is it anyways when they give him the random props? Like, here, build a gimmick out of these 4 things. All right. I mean, he just does it.
You remember that clip I sent you from last fall, or was like close to winter, where so he's in AEW, this new startup promotion that Cody.
Which actually, didn't they just beat? Didn't they beat WWE in ratings or something like that?
So before the pandemic happened, where it's led to all these empty arena shows, and I think viewership has dwindled a bit because I think wrestling in an empty arena is just kind of hard. You know, I mean, I think they're doing the best they can with it, but I think it's still a hard medium to kind of translate when you don't have a crowd. And he was doing he was in the middle of a feud with He was Dean Ambrose in WWE, but he's John Moxley in AEW. And he was reading, it was this list of
list of wrestlers that he would not wrestle ever again.
Yes, and there's an example where 2 years prior to that, when he was in WWE, he came up with this concept of the list. Mm-hmm. And it was this thing that he somehow got over big time with the crowds, where the crowds would just go crazy when he would add someone to the list. It sounds so stupid, but he made it. This is the brilliance of Jericho.
He carries everything off. It's ridiculous.
He absolutely does. And so now you had him, going through this list, and the way he did it was just so funny. He's reading it completely deadpan, like serious bad guy heel sort of, going through this list. But it was so ridiculous. We'll have to post the link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube somewhere. But anyways, he is such a creative guy. And then you have Paul Big Show White, who is just the guy just is a perennial workhorse for being this massive 7-foot guy, and
he has his own show on Netflix right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think his wrestling days are over. I think if he does wrestle, he's on that track of it being once in a while now.
He's on the Undertaker program.
Yeah, basically.
Take him out of the cryo chamber once a year.
Basically, yeah. I mean that poor guy just went around the babyface heel merry-go-round so many times. I mean, they just really drained him of I don't mean to say drained him of interest, but it's like when you have a guy whose character flips that many times, it's like it just loses any sense of value, and it doesn't become very shocking when it happens. But overall, he's ironically, from documentaries I've seen, he is, for his size, he is probably one of I don't mean to say one of the best wrestlers, but one of the guys, I think a few of the wrestlers have said, from a technical wrestling standpoint, he really knows how to teach the younger guys, how to move around in the ring, how to sell, how to, he's really been kind of key to bringing some of the young talent up. So which you wouldn't think for a bigger guy, you know what I mean? Like a big guy is normally kind of plodding and not very athletic or not very nimble, and he just has that right mix of athleticism and to go with just the size that he has. So
yeah. I think the other thing that was always tough for him was just being that big, being in that Andre the Giant-esque bracket.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know what the size comparison is or anything like that, and it's tough to do anyways because no wrestler is ever a legit listing. It's always up or down or whatever. It's almost like trying, when they say, oh, well, this NFL lineman weighed in at this, like, yeah, that's a wink and a nudge right there. Like, yeah, he weighed in at 305. When?
Right.
When he was in high school? Have you seen this guy? Ain't no way that guy's 305. We're talking, he might be pushing 4.
Yeah.
But being in that category, and the same reason why they moved Andre around so much is because you kind of lose interest.
Mm-hmm.
Because the character is just being a giant.
Yes.
And it's tougher for someone like that to find something besides like, hey, I'm big.
Right.
And
and the big conundrum with having a character like that is the fact that for all intents and purposes, and I think this is one of the reasons or one of the ways promoters worked around Andre the Giant was, they rarely had him, challenge for the title, and when he did challenge for the title, it was he would win by count out or by some other means where he didn't get the pin on the champ, so he wouldn't get the belt. Because let's be honest, if he ever won, who the heck is going to pin him? You know what I mean? Like, especially Andre. Andre was just so massive, and it would take someone of a similar size, to really make it believable that he could lose as a champion. And so you had, Big Show had the same, sort of struggle because he was so much bigger than everyone, and it would take fighting in the ring with here's another one you should put in the show notes. When he and Lesnar did the suplex, do you remember that?
No.
Lesnar it was in a SmackDown from somewhere in the late 2000s.
I love that you have this information just stored away.
Oh, it is.
Awesome.
Well, you don't forget this one, but Lesnar takes the Big Show and does a vertical suplex from the top turnbuckle, hits the ring. Now, of course, they gimmick the ring to do this, but the ring then collapses. So there's the impact of their bodies hitting, so one boom, and then all of a sudden everything around the ring just collapses and the ring collapses with a second boom and the crowd just goes nuts. I mean, it was such a visual that the two of them created. But that's the thing. It would take a guy like Lesnar or someone, like Drew McIntyre right now, who, I never realized until they started to highlight him this year, standing next to Lesnar. McIntyre, he doesn't dwarf Lesnar, but he's taller and he's bigger. And you really are like, wow, McIntyre, for some reason, I thought he was more of a Shawn Michaels, kind of body type. But, a guy like him, I mean, he could make it believable taking it to a guy like that. So anyway, so it's just, it's just interesting, pairing up, a guy like Jericho, who's just the ultimate showman, and Big Show, who is just, this very athletic big man was just kind of a fun pairing, but albeit very random.
Yeah. I think it would have been good if they'd used your name for that as a gimmick. Well, it's a big conundrum. I feel that would have some legs.
I think so too.
Someone get Vince on the phone for me. I'm talking to the non-existent production staff that I have here in my office.
I love it.
I want to be like the Joe Rogan podcast where he's just asking that dude, "Hey, can you look this up?
Yeah.
Can you look this up? Yeah. Can you look this up?" I just want that dude just wants to grab his laptop and huck it at Joe Rogan like, "You know what? Look it up yourself." I have hopes and dreams too.
Oh, gotta love it.
Anywho,
gotta love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for tuning in and indulging us in about 10 minutes worth of wrestling right at the top of a show about Battlestar Galactica.
We mix it up. Let it not be said.
Yeah, unfortunately, most people would say we don't mix it up nearly enough or way too much. So you can't make everybody happy, and that's why we're trying to make no one happy. So we appreciate y'all for tuning in and for downloading, for subscribing. You can find us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. All of those are at Free Range Idiocy. You can also find us on YouTube. Just go ahead and search Free Range Idiocy there. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube because that's where we put full-length episodes. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on Podbean, on iTunes, on Spotify, or you go right to freerangeidiocy.com. That will take you to our Podbean page. You'll see all of our episodes, and bada bing, bada boom, there you go. And as well, we are taking questions and suggestions from the listening audience. You can send those to tim@freerangeidiocy.com. Have I missed anything?
No, I think you've covered most of the angles. Business has been addressed, and there's only one piece that we need to do before we get into BSG.
Yes, and since you mentioned that we're in week 10 of lockdown, I'm especially looking forward to this part. So, sir, what you drinking?
To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
There we go.
Oh, we got a can.
We have a can. Got a nice pop out of that one.
Should I play the can with, or that's probably for something else?
I will leave it to the executive producer if he wants to include the can. But
all right, well, we'll see.
This is from Solemn Oath Brewery, local brewery here in the west suburbs. That's suburbs.
Oh, nice.
Of Chicagoland, Naperville, Illinois. I am drinking tonight the Snaggletooth Bandana American India Pale Ale, clocking in at a 6.5 ABV.
Now, what exactly is a Snaggletooth Bandana?
I'd imagine it's a bandana that may have a snaggletooth or two on it.
That's why he gets the big bucks, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my goodness! And how does it taste, sir?
It is a tasty little treat. This one, nice, very nice, very nice pale, very nice IPA, very nice. And what are you consuming, my friend?
Well, the whiskey of the night is Johnny Drum, Kentucky bourbon out of the Willett Distillery in Bardstown, Nelson County, Kentucky. And this is the Johnny Drum private stock. I don't know if there's even a regular stock. I do not know. But it is coming from the bourbon capital of the world, Bardstown, Kentucky. It is quite lovely.
Very nice.
And yeah, so it's a very smooth drink.
No snaggletooth?
No, there's no snaggletooth at all with this one.
All right.
Maybe a bucktooth. I'm not sure. Perhaps a missing tooth. I don't know, but I didn't ask for dental records, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
All right.
So we again, part of the reason why we have this moment here is because, well, we are in lockdown, but also you had to teach a youngin about some driving.
Oh yes, yeah. We had.
So you need a little pressure release right now to calm the nerves.
Yes, yeah. We both had kind of momentous,
semi-traumatic
occurrences this week for myself. Yes, my oldest has his license and is a licensed driver, and my youngest is right there ready to learn. Of course, with the pandemic going on, that kind of complicates that whole process a smidge. But we got out and did fantastic. First time out, a little easing him into it. So, it was good. It was very good.
Now, have you heard about what they're doing? I think it was in Florida, because of course, all the weird stuff seems to happen in Florida. It seems like the whole Florida man thing. But did you hear that in some states they're actually allowing kids to get their license without the driving test?
Really?
Because what could possibly go wrong there?
Well, that's smart.
and the other thing was, as we were talking pre-show, and you mentioned taking him to the big parking lot.
Yes.
I remembered where my parents gave me. My mom actually took me for my first kind of like driving experience. It was in a cemetery.
Really?
Which in a way kind of made sense, because there's a lot of like turning, and it's a little bit roads, and hey, if you hit anyone, I mean, chances are you hit anything, chances are you're not going to hurt anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Your chances of running into anybody that's of the living is kind of slim and none. So
yes,
that was immediately what I thought about when you told me about the venue in which you had given said instruction.
I thought you were going to say they just threw you into the deep end and had you just start out on Spalding Turnpike and off you went.
No. Although it was pretty funny. My dad had a work truck, and I got to drive that, which was a totally different experience than driving a car.
Nice.
So yeah, there was some interesting moments in my young driving career. My driving test was at night.
Really?
It was in the dark.
Oh my gosh.
Because my birthday being in the winter, it was getting dark really early.
Oh jeez.
And it wasn't like 8:00 at night, but it was like 4 in the afternoon, and in the winter it can get really dark, and it happened to be a night when it was really overcast, so it was real dark real early.
Oh jeez.
Almost got into 2 accidents, neither of which were my fault.
Oh God.
It was both like just idiotic drivers who, one ran a stoplight.
Oh wow.
And another was just not paying attention, and the driving instructor who's giving me my test was actually very complimentary of my reflexes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I was like, and I'm like shaking. I'm like, He's like, good job. I'm like, how are you so calm? Oh wait, you do this all the time.
Right.
You are either the calmest person in the world, or you have a death wish.
Yes.
I don't know which. Maybe it's both. Who knows? Anyways.
And then your momentous occasion.
Yes. I am a proud father of a teenager.
Oh. Welcome to the club.
Oh, boy. Ooh, boy. Ladies and gentlemen, things just, as good old JR used to say, business is about to pick up.
Oh.
That's how I feel like.
No truer words have been spoken, my friend.
I mean, I've already gotten eye rolls that I can actually hear. Like, have you ever had that happen?
Oh boy.
I don't think you're really a parent until you've like actually heard an eye roll, like dice in a Yahtzee cup.
The supersonic eye roll.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. But yeah, no, it's not. I am blessed. I have a wonderful kid. But oh my gosh, yeah, teenager, that's just a wacky time for everyone. So I'm bracing. I am bracing for impact, like in the mini-series
Welcome
of
to the
Battlestar
jungle.
Galactica. Brace for contact.
That's right.
that's what I'm doing
Hoshi,
right now.
hit the FTL.
Oh my gosh. Well, no, Hoshi didn't show up till later. Anyways,
I
let's
know.
now that we are deep into the episode and nothing has happened yet so far. So let's actually start talking. We're talking about Battlestar Galactica season 4, the final season of Battlestar Galactica, which really hurts because, again, after watching these episodes, I'm like, why couldn't they have run for? Why couldn't this have been Cheers? Like, I would have just been like, yeah, find Earth. Okay, let's find the next Earth.
Yeah.
Just keep going,
Yep.
keep going. But that was not meant to be.
No.
So you have some general thoughts here, which I think I would very much like to hear your thoughts in general.
Yeah,
on, the first half of season 4.
Yeah, so I think we're in the interest of hopefully not recording until 4 in the morning on this topic. We're
I got no place to go.
We're trying to
Just saying.
to take a different approach to it. But first off, thematically, with the first half of season 4, is really what really stood out to me when I started watching these episodes was just how the theme of division on both sides started to crop up almost immediately. Like
Oh, yeah.
they're with season 3 ending I forget, was it a nebula they were at?
Yes.
Right, it was the nebula. That ends up being a linchpin for both the fleet and for the Cylons to start having fractured groups within themselves and fractured decisions needing to be made because of a lot of difficult decisions and information that comes to light. And on the fleet side, Starbuck, her return causes a lot of angst, which we'll talk about. Yeah. And on the flip side, on the Cylon side, at the end of season 3, we come to find out that Ty, Tyrell, Anders, and Tori are all Cylons. They are 4 of the final 5, and their presence ends up causing the Cylons to now start to splinter themselves because you have 3 of the models would like to pursue the final 5, and the other 3 models would prefer to not. And there's one model left that's been boxed who has seen their faces.
You also have the wild card of Boomer breaking with her
model. Yep.
With her model, which has never happened before. So I mean, as if you needed that situation more complicated.
Yes. And so it was just interesting that the first 3 seasons it was very much the fleet versus the Cylons, and now this first half we start to see it break into smaller groups and just more fractured, kind of divisions there of thought and purpose. And so and then the other interesting part with the final 5 is how they, like I just said, they're a dividing point, but they also end up being a unifying point because it is only through their presence and the revelation of who they are that leads to the Cylons and the fleet actually coming together to find Earth.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that fun little nugget at some point soon.
Oh, yes, we will.
So just thematically, that's just what kind of stood out to me. And as we start to go through our top 5 moments, we'll kind of touch on, how some of those themes get emphasized and kind of revisited over and over again with what happens in these episodes, because there's a lot of, there's some instances of hypocrisy, which we'll talk about with Roslyn and Starbuck. And, there's just a lot of fractures going on. I mean, it's not like the first 3 seasons were ever without, drama or issue on either side, but it just seemed like everything starts to fall apart after the nebula for both sides. And it's interesting how it all kind of comes together at the mid-season finale.
Yes, indeed. So for those of you who remember when we first started on this journey, this wonderful podcast journey that we've been on now for, it's got to be about a year now, isn't it?
We're getting there. I think we started in June.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we are creeping up on the first anniversary. And so when we first started this out, and it was a few episodes in when we first started going through all of our favorite Battlestar Galactica episodes, we would pick, I forget how many episodes we were picking at the beginning, and it was insane. And these episodes were 3 hours long, and we're trying not to do that this time. So we're going to break this down by each of our top 5 moments from the 10 episodes that make up the first half of season 4. Top 3 characters, and then top 3 episodes, which we will not discuss in depth and do our normal script read through, because it was as we were talking earlier, it was more like a filibuster than a recap. It was like we were trying to put off a very important vote, and we were just reading reading stuff out of the phone book, essentially.
Oh, my gosh.
So we're going to attempt to not do that. So let's dive in with our top 5 moments. And, sir, why don't you first start us out?
So I'm going to count backwards from 5 to 1. I kind of rank them in terms of the impactful nature of them. But I'll start with number 5, which I entitled Starbuck v. Roslyn. That's right. I went all Batman v. Superman on this one.
Oh, please don't mention that. My hatred for that movie is an entire episode.
Yes. The 2 episodes in question, mainly because one of them ends and then the next one begins and picks up right where it leaves off. He That Believeth Me and 6 of 1. Basically, Roslyn doesn't trust Starbuck, but seems to forget she asked the fleet to follow her quest to find Earth based on a drug-induced vision.
Yes.
Kettle, thy color is black, I say.
Mm-hmm.
I found Roslyn to be insufferable in this episode.
Oh yeah,
she was awful. Oh my god,
she is incredibly unlikable at times in this portion of the show.
Yes, yeah,
and it's kind of tough because in a way, her and Adama have kind of switched roles, and sometimes it feels like she's the hard ass and he's the soft touch.
Yeah.
But she's not good at being a hard ass. Like, she can't be a hard ass in kind of a nice, trying to build you up way. Like, she just wants to eradicate you from the existence, essentially.
Yes. And what was interesting, and you understand it to a point with them fearing Starbuck as a Cylon, because she's been away for, I believe they said 2 or 3 months, right?
2 months.
About 2 months from the time that. If you want to call it the accident or whatever you want to call it, happened to her until when she comes back. They just they don't know what to make of her, and it's completely understandable. They're starting, season 4 gets into some real funky territory because it's a bit delving more into the spiritual. It's getting into a bit more of destiny and, some higher power kind of using these people as pawns in a way. And when Starbuck comes back, Roslyn just does not accept her for being Starbuck, even though everything they see in her and can tell from her shows that she isn't a Cylon. They just can't understand how she came back, and that's the part that they can't reconcile. But for Roslyn, when Starbuck's only request is, trust me, let me find, stop jumping further and further away. I need to find, get back to Earth. We can find it. It was just such a hypocritical turn for her character to be like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. You're a Cylon. You're leading us to our doom. And, nothing you have to say is of value to me. Good day, madam.
Yes. I said good day.
Yeah, I said good day. That's pretty much it. I mean, she just does not trust her and will not follow her. And I found her very, very frustrating in that moment because, and Starbuck correctly calls that out. I mean, she basically says, I stood by you when you had your own vision of finding Earth.
And in a personal way, like she risked everything jumping back to Caprica.
Yep.
To get the arrow.
To fulfill what she was seeing in these. And they were. She was on the Kamala extract, and it was causing her to have these visions.
She's all whacked out in that Kamala.
I tell you, nothing like a little Kamala.
Well, I got nothing. I got nothing.
I made that up. But anyways, she just.
I want Snoop to become a Battlestar Galactica fan so he can do a whole album just on Battlestar Galactica references. Is that too much to ask? I mean, can we send Snoop some DVDs or something and hook him up? I think he'd be into it.
Adama faux shizzle.
Make money, make money.
Anyways, where are we heading with this?
No, I mean that's really it. It's just that whole interaction between the two of them, and the fact that in 6 of 1 right at the beginning, Starbuck even puts the gun down and says, "Take the gun and shoot me," and she tries to.
Oh yeah,
and she misses even though she's at point blank range.
At point blank range, nobody gets hurt.
But yeah.
Are we sure that Roslyn isn't a stormtrooper?
Could be.
Nice shooting, Elmer Fudd.
Did she try shaking that gun? Does it sound like a spray paint can?
Oh my gosh. One of my favorite things in science fiction.
Little Mandalorian there. Thank you.
So yeah, that was that. Oh yeah,
that just infuriated me. It, I know it's entertainment. I watch it for fun, but the writers are doing a good job when the character just gets under your skin and you're just like, "Argh!" You just get frustrated with her, and they played it to perfection. I mean, that's exactly how she came across, and she just had this very stubborn and arrogant streak about her, but in the end, Adama, finds a compromise where he gives Starbuck a ship and a crew, and sends her off on her way and keeps the fleet safe so that Rosalind can't protest. But yeah, it was just a very frustrating interaction between those two, because as a viewer, that Starbuck coming back is a miraculous thing. It must have a purpose to it. She must be onto something. And for goodness sakes, why now do you not want to listen to the one person who may know where Earth is?
Oh yeah, and I mean that scene in particular, I think both Mary McDonnell and Katie Sackhoff were tremendous in it. But honestly, Katie Sackhoff's performance in that was just so intense, and like just buying every single thing that she's talking about, and it was I love that scene. I agree, it was great, which is why one of my top 5 moments is all of episode 1, He That Believeth in Me. I couldn't narrow it down to one out of that, so I was just like, there's nobody really setting these rules, so I'm picking the whole episode. What are you gonna do? Come at me, bro. So nothing specifically about the episode, just the entire thing. I felt it was such a great way to come out of Razor and to really just put you back into the regular stream of story, and did it in such a nice way that I felt just from watching Razor, then going back into the first episode of season 4, it just felt perfect to me. Yeah. I loved it. I thought there were some great performances. I just thought everyone was really on in that episode. Callus was, oh my God, Baltar. I mean, again, just the Baltar cult is so ridiculous, but yet you could see it coming a mile away if you were paying attention. Of course Baltar is going to become a cult leader. Of course he is. Like, there's no other way that this character is going to go. He's going to have a compound somewhere. That's the way it works.
It is so cool to see his character embody this journey from scientist to politician to then religious leader.
Oh yeah.
I mean, his character is literally a touchstone for all those major cultural points that a culture requires. In terms of having scientific knowledge, having political influence and power, and then having religious belief and faith. It was such a neat use of his character, because once season 3 ended, what's left for him? He was lost. He had no one in the fleet that wanted to be around him. And it was just kind of an interesting place to take his character next. And I thought it was well done. Very well done.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those deals where you see him become more and more self-aware.
Yes.
But yet at the same time, he is still ridiculous, because he even though he's self-aware, his ego is just front and center in everything. Like he can't help himself.
Yeah.
The character just can't help himself.
Well, and
it makes him so fun to watch, but yet then when all of a sudden it gets serious, then Baltar can actually be like kind of the pivot point for so many of these plot lines, because number one, James Callis is a really good actor, and this character that they've given him is a lot to work with, but I'm sure there was a lot of what he did with it just from listening to some of the commentaries where they're like, we didn't realize how funny Baltar was until, Callis is there, and then you're like, oh wow, this character is actually comedic. There is a comedic side to him.
No more Mr. Nice Guys!
No more Mr. Nice Guys!
Oh my gosh.
I love that. That line just kills me every time I hear it.
Yeah,
every time I hear
it. I would love to know if that was an improv or if that was in the script. I would love to know.
That or Baltar walking through the halls of the Galactica holding a coffee tumbler are just two of the best things about that game.
You and the coffee tumbler, like you have a thing with that coffee tumbler.
It's the future. It's space. Don't they have something better? I mean, come on.
it's realistic. Like, this is in Star Trek. He
At
doesn't
least
go
Picard
over,
had a teacup for his Grey. Hot.
Well, yeah, and he had a saucer too, but that's not Galactica. Like, you're lucky you have a mug.
Ah, jeez.
That Ty hasn't already used for his liquor.
I know.
Anyways, so give me another one of yours, since you're counting down. Mine are in no particular order. I'm a total slacker. You actually have an order.
So
number four,
number four for
two.
me is will seem kind of like a small moment, but I feel like this is, I'm going to use the word linchpin and trigger a lot probably tonight, but this to me was the turning point. This is where if this show or this first half of the season was a set of dominoes, here's where the first domino causes the chain reaction. And this is when Anders goes out into combat as a Viper pilot. He's out engaging with the Raiders, and he's about to, kind of engage for the first time. Can't get his guns to fire. The Raider flips around. He's got him dead to rights, and the Raider scans him. And at the moment of scanning, the Raider flips and just takes off. Doesn't shoot him, doesn't do anything. And Anders knows what he is at this point. And now he's kind of crapping his pants a little bit because he's like, uh-oh. You know, what just happened here? They're supposed to shoot me, and they didn't.
They know that I know that they know that I know.
But it really is the domino that causes this cascade of events that leads to the fracturing of the Cylons. Because now when the Raiders all return, and the fleet knows they were probably going to be done for at that point. So the Cylons retreating was basically like, what the heck just happened? They really could not make heads or tails of it.
Yeah.
And when they return, this is where the fracture begins between the Cylon models, because Cavill and I don't know, have all the model names memorized, but of Cavill and the ones that support him,
Doral and
I forget the other guy's name.
I can't remember the doctor. Shoot.
But they want to lobotomize the Raiders. Like Cavill, he is on a warpath of not pursuing this Final Five thing. And we later learn in the second half why that is.
Yeah.
Because, of course, there's more in play. But it's very interesting because this is the first time we see, him trying to manipulate a situation and try to, avoid something. There's some truth that exists on that path that he clearly does not want them to go down.
Yeah.
And so it's just to me, this was a very key moment, that really sets everything in motion for what we see happening from that point on. And there's a lot significant that happens from that point on. We end up, one of the big things, because I don't think this is in your list, so I'm not spoiling anything, but one of the biggest things that happens is the destruction of the Resurrection Hub, which now makes the Cylons mortal. They no longer have the ability to just reconstitute themselves. And so, all of that starts here with him being out, with Anders being out in, the field of war and getting scanned and triggering this reaction by the Raiders and those models. And it just leads to this, to the sequence of events that dictates now a very different path than what the fleet and the Cylons started out on in season 1.
Exactly. Yeah. So and by the way, number 4 is Simon.
Simon, that's right. Yes.
Played by Rick Worthy, in case you were wondering. So yeah, that and yeah, totally. That is one of those small moments, and Battlestar is filled with these. Like we were talking about this beforehand, and there's so many of these in every episode that I had to give myself some guidelines of when I was going to take notes for my top moments, because everything could be a top moment, because everything is very important to something else that's happening or going to happen or has happened. It's so layered.
Yeah.
But this really is. You're right. This is the first domino to really fall towards Cylon Civil War and how this is going to end up playing out, and even to the point of of some of the interactions between Starbuck and Anders and everything else, talking about the hybrid, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Now, what happens in the second half of season 4? Kind of funny that Anders and Kara are talking about hybrids,
right?
Don't you think? So yeah, there's all these little things that you can grab out of. Oh, so good, so good.
Very.
Anywho, so the next one for me, and this is kind of it's one moment, but it's also kind of the culmination of an arc that to me was one of the most bizarre relationships ever. I'm feeling pretty good about saying ever because there's a lot of circumstances here that I don't think occur in your normal everyday story. But Adama and Tyrell in Joe's bar talking about Callie, and where there was one specific moment that I thought was fantastic where Tyrell is talking to Adama, and all of a sudden, it's something that Tyrell hears that Adama doesn't actually say, but Edward James almost does it so seamlessly, just like shifting his entire tone.
Yeah.
And saying something really cutting about Callie, like that he would never actually say.
Yep.
And Tyrell does that double take, like what? And they did it. I mean, it was just shifting from one mode right into another. I'm like, oh, that was such a great acting moment. But overall, just that moment when Tyrell is going off on Callie and how he was, this idea of like none of us ended up with who we wanted. We took the best of what was left and all this. And he's being so like just spiteful and hateful and just ugly, and took his character to such a place where I'm like, wow, I forgot how nasty this scene was.
Yeah.
And ends up getting himself busted down to like from chief down to like
specialist.
Deck swabber, basically.
Yeah.
This close to cleaning toilets with a toothbrush.
Yeah.
And just the way that whole thing plays out, and you really understand, like, there's these certain parts of Tyrell that are he just swings from extremes, and this whole Callie Tyrell relationship is so freaking bizarre when you really get down to it.
Yeah.
Because Callie knew about him and Boomer sneaking into the parts locker and having their little tryst in the miniseries. Like, that was one of the things. Like, they would, like, her exchange to another, like, deckhand, like, hey, I guess what they're going to go do. And then she's the one that shoots Boomer.
Yep.
So she's the one who shoots his ex-lover. She's the one who gets beaten up by Tyrell in a fit of rage when he's like freaking out.
Yep.
Then they end up getting married and having a kid. I mean, it's like and then they're having problems, of course, because he's a Cylon, she's a Pisces. I mean, it's never going to work. A toaster and like an air sign, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it's this weird relationship that always was just bizarre.
Yes.
And this whole thing kind of culminating of him losing it and not knowing how to handle it all.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of that definitely coming from a place of pain, I think.
Yep.
Of just totally not understanding who he is or what's been happening.
Yeah.
But to me, that moment was, again, it just reminds you of the loss and the trauma that all of these people have gone through, all of them, and how like your dreams have gone from, hey, I want to do this and I want to do this, to like, I'd like to live to see tomorrow.
Yeah.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to not get killed by a machine. That would be awesome. And I think that's kind of this recalibration of dreams and hopes that everyone has gone through. And Tyrell has, I'm going to say, maybe not dealt with it as well as other people, or is just a little bit more vocal about it.
Yeah, and I think that's now that you said that, I think that's a theme, I kind of missed in the general thoughts section of this, is there is throughout this first half of the season a struggle of all four, to varying degrees. Tori, Anders, Tyrell, and Cy all struggle with accepting who they are.
You mean Saul?
Did I say Ty?
No, you said Cy.
Did I say Cy? Oh my gosh.
You managed to combine the two. That was interesting.
Cy. Hello. No, I
have yourself another snaggletooth.
Excuse me for a moment. Hold on.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
There it is.
All right.
Tori,
now you're all
Tyrell,
away.
Saul, Ty, and Anders.
There you go.
Varying degrees of
sleepy,
acceptance.
Doc, dopey. Nutsy, Mo,
Jim
Larry,
Bob,
Curly,
Joe,
Chip, Dale,
Mary,
Blitzen, Connor,
Rudolph.
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
Why not?
Just throw them all out there.
To Talia and the other heads of the
God.
5 families, we're so glad that you're here.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Ladies and
way
gentlemen,
off the rails.
Week 10. Cheers.
Week 10 of lockdown. Where my original point was, there is a theme in the first half of the season where each of them, in a different way, is struggling with acceptance. And some more than others. You know, Tori, I think we'll get into her. She's one of my characters from the season with the way, you know, she kind of eases into it. Tyrell, as you were saying, though, he really struggles with it. He has a very, 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 you know, deep struggle with this, and it, you know, it affects his marriage. It affects, like you were saying in this moment here, he and Adama, you know, he just loses all control because he just doesn't care. You know, he despises himself, and I think a lot of the vitriol he spews about Callie, I think, is him just, you know, he's just in his own way kind of, you know, spitting out the hatred I think he has for the fact that he has found out that he is what he is.
Yeah.
And taking it out on her.
Yeah, out on her memory.
Yeah, out on her memory, exactly. Yep.
Which is a horrible thing, but at the same time, I mean, who's being rational at this point, really?
Yeah.
I mean, rationality is an awful short supply. It's almost like rationality has been rationed.
Dun, 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 dun.
You're welcome. So what's your next one?
My next one kind of building. So my number 4 was from He That Believeth Me. So still kind of in episode 1 territory. My number 3, again, bridges from episode 2 into episode 3. So 6 of 1 and then into the tie that binds. And that is the Centurion slaughter and the start of the Cylon Civil War. So at the, you know, in 6 of 1, as they're talking, as the Cylon models are debating lobotomizing the Raiders concerning the final 5, basically they're at kind of a standoff, and Cavill, you know, I think there's kind of an idea that Cavill has the upper hand, and 6 decides to basically, I forget precisely what it is that she does, but it essentially restores free will to the Centurions, because we come to find out the Centurions have, in essence, had their free will removed through some sort of blocking mechanism in their neural net. Yeah. And so they remove that.
Higher functions, I believe is how they put it.
Yeah, and so she removes that, and they come to understand that there is the final 5, and so they are on the side of you know, 6 and 8, and what's the other one? I'm forgetting.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we'll just the third model, whatever that one is.
Oh, no. Yeah, 2.
2. Thank you. Leoben. Thank you.
It gets tough when I'm trying to think of the number and the character name.
Yes. I couldn't remember either, so you're better than I.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason why this show is called Free Range Idiocy.
So the Centurions end up slaughtering the models, the Cavill, Simon, and Doral models on the ship. So now the ship becomes controlled by the ones who are for pursuing the final 5 and understanding who they are. That leads into the tie that binds, which is when the Cylon Civil War starts in earnest. And here we have Cavill pulling a fast one where he seems like he's going to, you know, agree to their demands that he is going to not lobotomize the Raiders, and they will start pursuing understanding who the final 5 are, and so on, and basically leads the rebellious models into a trap where they're basically attacked by his base stars, and so we find them in not so great shape at the end of that episode. And to me, this was a key moment because we had never really seen them oppose each other in this way. You know, that to see, you know, 6 take the action of actually having the Centurions slaughter their own, you know, in some small way to reinforce, you know, from their perspective, they were doing the morally right thing. They did not want to damage the Raiders and remove. And it's interesting, you know, when we first were introduced to the Cylons, they were all about kind of exercising their free will and living, you know, on, you know, nuked Caprica to kind of build their own society and be able to live in their own way. And we come to find out that, you know, the Centurions have been reduced down, that they don't have free will, that Cavill's first knee-jerk reaction is to basically remove the thought processing power of the Raiders. It's just this dumbing down of these creatures because they don't want them to pursue something, and it just hints at the fact that there's something more nefarious going on with the Cylons and has been going on for some time.
Which raises the question: at that point is Cavill now worse than the humans that he's trying to eradicate? Because, I mean, the humans built the Cylons to function, and to do labor and to do those things, and they evolved. But these creatures, he's actually going the other direction. Like, they're at this point, and now he wants to take away from them.
Yeah.
I mean, which one's worse?
Mm-hmm.
It starts getting real messy up on the base star.
Well, in both, I think in both scenarios you just outlined, it's control.
Mm-hmm.
Humans wanted to keep the Cylons as servants, controlled in a certain manner and doing things a certain way, and Cavill, will and Simon and Doral will find out are exercising control in their own way.
Yep.
I don't remember. I don't think Simon and Doral know what Cavill knows, but because Cavill seems to be the gatekeeper of all the knowledge.
Yeah.
We end up finding out in the
right.
second half, but
yes.
So that's my number 3. So what's your number 3?
This one is actually it's a little moment, but it was funny to me when Ty and Adama are having their fist fight, and Adama throws Ty over the couch or something, over his coffee table. And Ty takes out the model ship that Adama has been working on since the day before forever. And as Ty is there, they hit that old man in a fight point where they're just all right, we're both really tired right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to stop fighting because we're both broken and tired and old. And Adama does that. You know how many times I've had to repair this thing? As he's picking up the ship, and it's all the masts are busted.
Yes,
which I thought was a very nice way of a little tip of the hat to the fans who are probably all right, how many times are you going to fix this frickin' ship? How many times? Because he'd already wrecked it once after Starbuck had died,
yep.
And then he fixes it again. And before that, there was something else that happened, and all these things. It's how many times are they going to do this? And to kind of do that, I'm guessing Edward James almost was you know what, I know what we can do. Let me wreck the ship, and then I'll put this line in. Or some writer is we have to address this. We have to.
Mm-hmm.
In good conscience, I can't continue to write scenes where we come in and Adama's fixing the ship again, and just in his little zen state.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious. It was just a nice little tip of the hat to hardcore fans who are really? He's working on the ship again.
Where does he find the time?
Jeez. Are they going to find Earth? Is it a different ship at least? Nope, it's the same ship. Okay.
I don't remember the episode it was in, and I'm trying to think. Maybe this was I don't think this was from Razor. I think it was one of the episodes in the first half of the season, but there's some point. Oh, I think it was when, I think it was in the Romo Lampkin episode.
Mm-hmm.
And which I forget the name of, but he comes in to talk to Adama and hands him some forms to fill out. And I don't know, but I don't know why this stuff triggers in my mind when I'm watching this, because it's a sci-fi show, but I'm sitting here watching this wait a minute, they've been on the run for 3 years. They're still signing forms to do things?
Well,
you know what I mean? It's how long have they been on the run, and they're still adhering to process like this? It's incredible.
Well, I mean, in a way, it kind of makes sense. I mean, because what if I remember what you're talking about? Because he was asking him, it was notice of forfeiture or something, because essentially he was commandeering the ships,
mm-hmm.
and was going to basically take control of them. So the captains are hey, we don't want you to be held responsible. I think it's just trying to demonstrate that in those years, okay, we have lawyers now, we have stuff okay, for the first little while, hey, everybody's fine, but now we have kind of an economy, and we have a legal system, even though it's jacked up and all these things, and there are these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of funny when you think about it. Really, that's what we're worried about right now? We could get wiped out tomorrow.
Or at this stage where they've been on the run in space for a long time, it's at some point, don't you run out of paper? I mean, it's not like there's trees you're chopping down to make more,
Well, I
So-
mean, there's recycling and all those
Yeah,
things, but
could be.
I think it's just you look around at our world.
Mhm.
Like humans are amazingly adaptable to any situation, for good or bad.
Yeah.
Like we can normalize any kind of situation after a certain period of time, and people will just be like, go back to their regular behavior. It's just on a different scale or in a different direction, and it's very weird. But I guess maybe it's because I'm just not very optimistic about human beings, and that's why I like shows where like robots are trying to kill us. I don't know, some sort of it's deep human self-loathing that I have, that I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's totally how it would work, because we are petty in many ways, unfortunately, by human nature, and we have to work to overcome that. Anyways,
Yes.
So what's your next top moment, sir?
My number 2 moment comes from the episode Faith, the Starbuck hybrid interaction, and thus which does she saith, "Thus shall it come to pass, the dying leader will know the truth of the opera house." Wonder who she's talking about. "The missing 3 will give you the 5 who have come from the home of the 13th. You are the harbinger of death, Thrace. You will lead them all to their end." And end of line.
and up until like the whole "and you, Thrace, are the harbinger of death," everyone's like, all right, this is yeah, and it's like, oh, damn.
This sounds like a math problem from elementary school. The missing 3 will give you the 5 who have come from the home of the 13th. It's like, wait a minute, where am I? Who's on first?
Yeah. Oh, it's yeah, and it gets a little complex there, but yeah, then the idea of like, it really does put into doubt like who is Starbuck?
Yeah.
Who is? And I think it was, I had it noted down here. I've got to look at. Hang on, I got to look at my chicken scratch. But so episode 5, nothing. I don't even know what episode 5 was. I don't have it right in front of me here. But that's kind of the first time that we get the angel of light. That's when Leoben is talking about Thrace and like, I see you as this angel blazing with a light of God. And, all the Leoben stuff that he says. That's kind of the first time that you hear this angel of light, which then ends up being. I think that's kind of how people have described Starbuck at the end of the series.
Yeah.
That that's who she was and all that. But it really is. There's a lot of like, okay, who is she? What is she? What's going on? And all of that. And oh man, to be like, oh yeah, by the way, you'll lead them to their end. Like,
Right.
Okay.
Well, and all of them are hearing this. I mean, the Cylons are there. This is when they've boarded the base ship and are trying to work through this very tense kind of alliance, so to speak, which has its own twists and turns. I mean, there's that whole issue where one of the 6s kills one of the crew members and she dies in such a weird way, like she basically bangs her head on the ship and she starts to talk and then she just falls over. It was so disturbing watching that. And then and then Anders is ready to shoot her, and I think, and sorry, I'm kind of going off topic a little bit, but I think what's really interesting in that moment is you start to understand that the trauma cuts both ways.
Oh yeah.
That the 6 that did this did it because she remembers dying in a particular way back on Caprica at the hands of this human. And there's just something she cannot get past. And you think about the way she describes that, and it's exactly what our, the ragtag fleet is going through, that they've all lost in a very similar way. And so you start to see that these two groups are more in common than they realize, and that they're both suffering from the same trauma.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great hybrid scenes, or scenes centering around the hybrid. And another moment that there are these moments where you get a quick little chuckle, and it lets the pressure off. Like when they go back to the base star and Rosalind is there and she wants some answers. She's like, plug it in, and Baltar does the whole "let God's will be done," and she's like, shut up. Like in that moment, I was like, all right, that was kind of funny. Like Baltar's trying to play it one way, and Rosalind's just like, I ain't having this. I could die any second now. Just let's get the show rolling.
Yep.
And that was like the one time when the gruffness of her character is like, that's something I'd expect out of like Coddle.
Yeah, right,
like,
right. With a butt hanging out of his mouth, you know.
Oh yeah, totally. That's all Mary McDonald was missing there. Was like just a cigarette hanging out of the corner of her mouth. Like, shut up,
make it happen.
That would have that would have been awesome. Can someone just CGI that in there?
That's right.
For a YouTube video? Someone who's much better at stuff than I am. But yeah, that was the Starbuck hybrid interaction was so good again because it's a pivot point for where you're heading, and it reinforces and it calls back to Razor at the end when Kendra is talking to the hybrid.
Yes.
And tells Kendra like she is the harbinger of death, and she tries to call back, and that doesn't work out well.
Right.
So it's a nice little callback, but also a reinforcement, and now Starbuck knows that.
And it starts to bring into focus a bit what Rosalind has been dreaming about, and that this opera house dream that that she's having, where she's interacting with Boomer and with Six, or Athena.
And now she's seen Baltar.
Yes, and sees Baltar there, and so it's starting to again this is where it gets a little funky, a little more kind of miraculous spiritual nature sort of stuff going on, where they can't a simple explanation is not going to cover it. There is no easy explanation for why this is happening. So there's something greater afoot going on with this, and and here she is exposed to it. Yeah. What's your next one, my friend?
Another comic relief because you took all the good ones, but that's fine because I was negligent in even getting my butt into gear. I just finished watching the last episode today, so you, as usual, you've done your homework, and I was cramming for the test at the last second, so I totally understand.
Hey, it's kind of like college days, baby.
Yeah.
Yes.
And actually, let's just pause for a moment. So, kids, come a little closer.
Here we go. This Uncle Todd moment was brought to you by.
Come here, let Uncle Todd learn you a little something here. Learn how to study, okay? Like if you're in high school and you're getting decent grades, and you think you're going to go to college and pull the same crap you did in high school, let Uncle Todd assure you it ain't gonna work. You take that junk to college, and it's gonna be the equivalent of thinking that, oh, I was a star linebacker in high school. I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna be a star linebacker there. No, you aren't. You're gonna get your jock handed to you. You're gonna have missing teeth. You're gonna have teeth coming out of orifices that you didn't realize that they could travel that way. That's just how life works. Big fish, small pond. All of a sudden, you head downstream. And I'm a minnow. I'm a guppy. Learn how to study, folks.
It's like
learn how to study.
It's like you're the deck chief Taro who just got busted down to specialist.
Yep. I went through 5.5 years of college, and God bless my mom. She was nice enough to say, well, there's a lot of people who take that long. I'm like, yeah, they have letters after their name. I don't. So, but it took me until the last year I was in college to really learn how to learn. Kids, let Uncle Todd tell you, do it sooner.
Get ahead of that.
And you'll get a lot more out of college. That's all I'm going to say. I enjoyed college thoroughly. I just wish I had learned how to learn so that I would actually remember useful information from college, aside from how to tap a keg. Actually, you know what? I didn't even learn how to tap a keg in college. I learned how to tap a keg after college.
This Uncle Todd moment was brought to you by
Geritol.
So what was your moment, my friend, of levity, of comedy?
Well, so in the episode The Hub, Baltar talking with the Centurion.
Ah, yes.
Just those intercuts that they would keep coming back to Baltar, and he's like, you do know about, the Cylon God, right? And it's this total thing where he's just like, I could have watched an entire show about Baltar just BSing with a Centurion.
Yes.
And the fact, and then when they get to the point where, hang on 1 second, I got to look this up, and I didn't even write down exactly what he said. So, but he's talking to him, and then all of a sudden, the centurion cocks its head like a golden retriever that just heard the noise, like, that sort of thing, and does it. It was just awesome.
Yeah.
It was just such a pressure relief, and it was so like in character for Baltar, because that's what Baltar does. He is a walking, talking BS machine, and can just like shuck and jive with you, like, oh yeah, hey, let me. It was just great. It takes you back to like a mini series, like season 1 Baltar, where he just is pulling stuff out of his butt, and people are buying it because they're like, oh, he's the smartest man in the fleet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought that was fantastic.
Oh,
it was just a great.
It was just so. I don't mean to say it was odd, but it just felt so. It felt odd given what was going on. There's like this really tense, negotiations and this very fragile alliance being formed, and here he is walking the halls of the base ship like, oh hey, I'm going to chat you up about the Cylon God. Have you heard of him lately? It's just like so out of like the realm of what they're dealing with. It's so weird.
Have you heard about our Lord and Savior, the toaster oven? Have you? Here, let me.
Oh my!
Would you like to buy a watchtower? No. Actually, be more like, would you like to buy a parts catalog? That would be more in line with that. Anyways, but that was just
great
one
moment.
of mine.
Great moment.
So I believe this puts you at your number 1 moment.
My number 1 moment, and you and I have talked a lot about this offline, outside of the realm of this fine show. I am, it is hard for me to think of another show that could possibly gut punch you the way that this one did.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, seriously, I really struggle to think of another show that pulled off the sort of gut punch they do in Revelations, but. And I'm not even going to give a spoilerific warning, because let's face it, folks, if you're listening to us this far, we've spoiled a whole lot more than that. But
this was like Leon Lett dangling the football behind him. It was like just premature celebration galore.
Oh my goodness. Long story short, in this episode,
long story as in 3.5 seasons ago.
3.5 seasons ago. No. 407. Basically, events play out where the Cylons and humans come to an understanding and alliance where they are able, they understand that they have all the keys to finding their way to Earth, and decide to form an alliance to accomplish that, to that end. Yeah. They get there, Starbucks Viper has some sort of weird radio signal that only it's picking up, and they're able to follow that. They get to the planet. There's a huge celebration on Galactica.
Oh, Adama makes like one of those great Adama speeches.
Oh, it is glorious. It is glorious. And
like the vaguely Irish music, I think, is playing and swelling in the background now. But it's like, oh, this is it.
I think
this is it.
Doesn't Lee like jump up on one of the CIC tables and start stripping or something?
He had everything but the Dennis Johnson towel, like twirling around. Like, yeah.
I mean, he's like the acting president at this point too, isn't he?
No, because Rosalind's back at that point, so she is the president.
Oh, okay, okay. So he is not besmirching the good of the office.
No, he's very much the Dan Quayle though at that point.
So there's all this revelry, and I remember the very first time I saw this. I you don't know what's coming next, and you're like, there's a whole half season left, and we're like, well, if they found Earth, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, sure enough, and I love how they cut over to this. They show the ships flying in, and then it just kind of fades, and all you see is sand, and you see Adama's hands scoop it up.
The first fistful of Earth, as Rosalind has said. She can't wait for this moment.
And then you hear the crackling.
Yeah.
You hear the crackling of the
Geiger
scanners,
counter.
The Geiger counter. And you come to understand, and you can just, I mean, I love how Edward James almost plays this. He just throws the sand down in just utter disgust. And they pan back, and nothing is said from this point on. It is just all visual, and you just see them not melancholy, that's not even a word, but just the melancholy of the scene, of all the characters.
Downtrodden,
depressed, as you see that this is not the Earth that they were expecting to find, that it is an Earth You know, the damnedest shot is when they actually, you know, pan over from the ocean and you start to see the shoreline and you start to see the crumbled buildings.
Yeah,
and
they just reveal more and more
Yes.
of that. Like every character that comes in, you start seeing more wreckage, more rubble.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and you come to understand that wherever they ended up, this Earth is basically trashed. It is not a place that they're going to be able to settle in, and so you're just like, holy moly! So where does that leave? And that's how the episode ends.
Yeah.
So now you're staring down the barrel of the half season, like, what are they going to do now? I mean, what comes next at this point?
Yeah. Well, and this was another episode. This was another series that it aired in 2 parts. Series 3 didn't really have a mid-season break as the first 2 seasons had, if I'm remembering right. This one did. So April to June 2008 was the beginning of the season, and then you had to wait from June until January to finish this.
Oh.
I mean,
the humanity.
Yeah.
Oh, the humanity.
Yeah. I mean, that was one hell of a way to get people like, now what? Oh my gosh,
it was awful. You finish watching that show like, oh, I feel awful. You just had, and you had to digest it for a little bit. It really just kind of smacked you across the face.
Oh yeah, it's like watching the first episode of Chernobyl, except it took you 3.5 seasons to get to that point.
Yep.
Yeah, that was rough.
And before the show, Todd and I were both discussing one of the. I mean, if there could be, I don't know if it's a comedic moment. I kind of thought it was very in character for this to be the case. But as they're panning through the characters, and we were talking about this, it comes to Tyrell.
Yeah.
And Tyrell just has this. I mean, all of them just look forlorn, sad, depressed. Just like they understand that they are not settling in this place at all, and they're bewildered. I mean, Deanna's probably the only other one that has an expression, and she just looks confused.
Well, yeah,
because
she
like,
reaches out and it tries to take Anders' arm or touch his elbow or something. He's had nothing of it. He kind of walks away from her. But then there's Tyrell, who just has this smile on his face, just shaking his head, almost like same frack, different day. Just like he's just like whatever. Yeah, of course this is going to happen. Of course this is how it's going to happen. You know?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it is just the gut punch to end all gut punches.
But I really didn't notice that until this viewing. I had never really paid that much attention to it before.
Yep.
But this viewing, I caught that and I was like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That totally makes sense.
And they're all on the same page. I mean, in that moment, the Cylons and humans are all on the same page. They are all equally hit with this reality.
Yeah, Deanna looks like she's lost. Like she doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, Deanna's
I came
lost,
back from the
doesn't
dead
know.
for this.
Tyrell's like, yeah, whatever, same thing.
Yeah,
more of the same. Can't catch a break.
Starbucks like, of course, this is how it's going to go.
Yeah. And that brings us to, now this isn't really a gut punch, but I would say in terms of how this was acted.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet Moses. So please, sir, what is your final moment?
So, of course, in Revelations, Deanna has come back and she wants everybody, she wants the final 5 or the final 4 to be with them. And so she's holding the humans hostage. Now she's like, she kicked one out an airlock because she's decided to change. Because, I mean, Deanna's a loose cannon at this point. And so Ty, God bless him. I mean, he understands exactly what he's doing. And he understands that he is a bargaining chip that can be used because no one knows that he's a Cylon. And so he goes to Adama and he confesses that he is one of the final 5 and that he's known it and that he is straightforward with it. And he even says he wished he'd had the guts to airlock himself.
Yeah.
And then Adama's reaction to it, just seeing the man fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how you would imagine like someone dealing with like this immediate trauma, like you hear of people just this wail coming out of them, and that's how Edward James almost plays this, just this wail, and this just goes from like rage and just sorrow and just, oh my gosh, it's heartbreaking, and he becomes completely incapacitated.
Yeah,
like he is not able to do anything.
The scene when Lee
Oh yeah,
is picking him up off the ground, and like you just said, there's
he can't. Like he's literally just holding him.
Yeah.
Like on the floor of the bathroom.
Yeah, and I mean he's like drooling. He's just he's wailing. He's broken. He's just absolutely broken.
Yeah, and that was like because that's the one thing that he's always had is Saul.
Yes.
By his side.
Yep.
And you really understand just how much he loves this guy, just how close they are, and how close of a friend he considers him.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have that kind of betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, it's heartbreaking. Like it just breaks him right down to like his core.
Yeah. And you see it on Ty's face when he tells him. I mean, he means every word he's saying about wanting to just off himself, because he would rather do that than have Adama have to live with the knowledge of what he is.
Yeah, and that's why even in the launch tube, like he has no emotion. No emotion. Even when they bring in Anders and Tyrrell, and I forget it, I think it was Anders who's like, I'm just going to take a guess here, but you told him?
Yeah, yeah.
And, it's like, all right, that was kind of funny. But then he doesn't have any emotion.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any emotion. He's like, this is how it's going to go. And even when they have him in the tube and Apollo is there and he's just going to airlock him. He's going to send him out the launch tube, and he's waiting and waiting and waiting. And Saul, you can kind of see him just like kind of shaking a little, but I don't get it. I don't get that it's out of fear. It's almost out of this, like, just get it over with. And he turns to Apollo. He's like, just what are you waiting for? Sort of thing. And oh my gosh. Yeah, the way that whole thing plays out, and even the aftermath of it, of Rosalind having to come in and kind of talk to him.
Yeah.
And he's just in a bathrobe and still kind of broken. The only thing that kind of gets him going is like, all right, we're going to Earth. And then tying into what you talk about, like he just throwing that dirt down in disgust, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like I've gone through hell and back, and now I feel like I've just bought the slow boat ticket back to hell.
Right.
Like at least the other one was the express. I got there quick. Now it feels like it's just going to take forever to get to hell. Because now what? Oh my gosh. But Edward James Olmos, good Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, and we've said it before in a bunch of these episodes, this cast, amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely amazing. But if you take Edward James Olmos out of this cast, I submit to you, I don't know who you replace him with where this works out as well.
Right.
He was perfect for this role. And it's not someone who you might have thought before who would be, oh, yes, of course, he's going to be Lauren Green, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know I think you could replace any of the other actors, and I probably wouldn't like it because I just love this show. That's the one point of failure that I could see. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you can replace him.
Well, it's the same thing with Next Generation and Patrick Stewart. I mean, you can't have that show be good without Picard.
True. And this actually leads into, what we were talking about beforehand is, Picard versus Adama. And
shut up, Wesley.
We'll have to do an entire episode on that because, quite honestly, I would be very interested to dive into that one. All right, so we've gone through our top moments. Let's get into top characters.
Can I throw a couple, just two special mentions? And I won't go deep on them. I just want to mention them.
No.
What?
No. Okay, fine.
Oh, jeez. First one, I think you would agree from the hub. Baltar's drug-induced confession.
Yes.
To Rosalind.
Yeah.
And
then
what she
Rosalind,
does after
like almost making the decision, like, I'm going to let this mofo bleed out. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So cold. And then she goes over and turns away from him and kneels to pray.
Yes. Yeah. She did what anyone I think in her position would have done. I mean, to hear him admit what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Which confirmed everything she thought about him, and the horror on her face was just so well acted. But like I said, I don't want to go deep on these. The special mentions. The other one is Callie's death.
Oh, geez.
That was another gut. I mean, not on the level of Revelations, but I did not see that coming. When I first watched these episodes, I mean, I did not read spoilers. I didn't, I wanted to really experience the series without knowing anything. And it was a really wonderful way to experience it because the story is that good. And when that happened, I'm just like, holy crap, what's going on? It's just like, I mean, Tori doing what she did. So that to me was another key moment. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about Tyrell, but yeah, so it's just a couple special mentions.
Right on. All right. So now can we get to characters?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you. So who are your top 3 here? And let's just run them down for me. Run down all 3. We don't need to.
Yeah.
Go back
So my top 3 are Tori, Felix, Gaeta, and basically the transition and relationship of Adama and Rosalind.
Right on.
So yeah, those are mine. I can go into a slight detail, but please tell me what yours are.
Well, I just touching on yours for a second. I think your Tori is an interesting call because she really came into her own in this season, and Gaeta, I mean, has been there forever. Oh my gosh, the episode where he basically spends the entire episode in sickbay singing.
Yeah.
Number one, lovely voice.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh! Like I want Felix Gaeta singing his greatest hits. I want that album like yesterday, but it just added such a like creepy undertone.
Yes.
To that, and really just, oh my gosh! Again, another roller coaster story arc.
Yeah.
For him.
And I listed him because he ends up. He gets shot in the leg on the Demetrius, and that's a whole thing we didn't really get into on our top 5 moments was just the whole Demetrius thing that played out. But which is weird because actually, and I just want to point this out because I was writing notes when I looked up and I saw the Demetrius on the screen for the first time, or since I'd watched it the last time. Is it just me or does it look like a locomotive in space? Does it look like it? Like a transformer? Well, that and the fact that everyone that's on it seems to be sweating, like it's 100 degrees in the place,
Yeah,
so.
like there's no AC apparently on this spaceship. Like really?
No.
Was this like the 1983 Ford Escort
That's right.
of spaceships?
That's right.
Yeah. But anyway,
hey,
no.
And quickly jumping back to Tori, I mean, the reason I kind of put her in the list was, as we talked about, each of the final 4 of the final 5 embrace their nature in a different way, and I
love how you put that. The final 4 of the final 5.
That's right. The final 4 of the final 5. The 3 gets you to the 13th hike. But here we go. But Tori
7,11.
Tori embraces her nature. It's very interesting to see her evolution throughout the season because she goes from being a little unsure of herself to really embracing the fact she's a Cylon. To getting full on just arrogant with Rosalind by the end of the season, where she's just like, I don't have to do anything you tell me. I'm one of these all powerful beings here. You're posed, Missy.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I kind of also understood that moment.
Yeah.
Because here's Rosalind, who she's seen play any number of people, and she's realizing you're trying to play me right now. Ain't gonna happen.
Well, but it was also where they were on the base ship, and just the way she kind of just embraced that. It was almost like she was home.
Oh yeah,
you know what
totally.
I mean? Like that's what really stood out to me when she did that. It was the arrogance, but it was also like, I'm with my people now. You don't mean anything to me. I mean, it really was very stark the way that she kind of just shifted. And then the other part of it was the way she just murdered Callie, the way that she just kind of, in the interest of keeping their secret a secret of who they were, taking her out was just completely not what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you have the 4 Cylon out of the 4 out of the 5. So you have Tori, who really embraces being a Cylon.
Yeah.
Like she finds that out, and it's almost like a relief to her. Like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
You have Ty, who is on the other end of the spectrum.
Oh yeah.
He wants nothing to do with this, and I am Saul Ty. That's who I am. None of this fracking Cylon business.
Yeah.
Then you have Tyrell, who by the time he kind of gets to this point, he's very ambivalent about it. Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Just I don't.
I kind of feel like he struggles with it more than Ty, though.
Oh, I think he struggles more with it, but I think his overall, it's just this weird sense. I mean, Tyrell is a very conflicted character, and we'll get into him with my 3. But I feel like Anders is the one who Tyrell and Anders are kind of like those two in between, and I think Tyrell is, oddly enough, I feel he's more towards Tori, but that's almost in a like, all right, fine, yeah, I'm a Cylon. I don't know how to necessarily deal with that.
Yeah.
But okay.
Yep.
Because I mean, isn't he the one in the Nebula who's like, and we have been from the very start.
Yep. Yep.
You know, so I think he's kind of more in that he's not all the way to the Tory side, but then you have Anders, who's much more closer to wanting to not be Cylon.
Yeah.
Like he's got Kara, and he's trying to hold on to that aspect. And then the funny part being that he kind of ends up being the most Cylon of them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And so
Tory
so Tory's
amazing
interesting
in this
there.
part.
Gata was just losing his leg. We'll see in the second half how that ends up taking its toll with him and what becomes of him. And then all I'm going to say about my last one is Adama / Roslin going from their relationship goes from professional to personal, and I'll sum it up quite simply with this. Roslin says, "I love you," and Adama says, "About time."
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
I've been really trying.
Oh, here we go.
I'm telling you, man. Yeah. And which again, the response to "I love you," there are two great sci-fi responses. The first one being, "I know."
Oh.
The second one being
the great Han Solo.
"It's about time."
That's right. That's right.
That is hallowed company, ladies and gentlemen.
It
hallowed
completely
company.
is. It completely is. And
I need a buddy movie with Harrison Ford and Eddie Olmos. I didn't realize that until right now. You know what? I want to see those two as like just kind of old guys like duffing around somewhere. I want that. Like I want grumpy old men with Eddie Olmos and Harrison Ford.
There you go.
Damn it. Well, you know what? Once I get London Weapon made, then I'm all over that.
Okay.
That's
right.
next on the list.
And just the final statement on Adama Roslin. I think they did a nice job over the course of the first half of the season of kind of building to that point. It was clear that Adama is kind of letting his guard down with her. I think, her mortality is kind of helping him realize that how he really feels about her. I think and to see the two of them interact and become a lot more personal with each other than they had in the prior seasons. It's less president and admiral and more, just a man who just genuinely cares about this woman who's, who he just has great affection for. And, of course she's suffering and she's dying from something, but he just, I think the fact that she is going to most likely die this time around is giving him greater focus in terms of, realizing, what he feels about her. So it was just kind of a neat arc that they did across the half season with those two.
Yeah, and I mean, in the second episode, that scene where she's in his quarters, because that's where she's shacked up on Galactica getting her treatment, and he comes back, I think it's from the Lee's retirement or whatever, and he's, if he ain't loaded, he's about 3/4 of the way there.
Yep.
And they start having that discussion. And she's mad, and he's just drunk, and they're going back and forth, and they're both just kind of really letting it fly, and it's one of those kind of things where you're like, yep, this is a couple of people who've been around the block a few times, and they're just like, you know what, life's too short. I'm saying what I feel.
Yep.
And wow, it gets uncomfortable to the point where he just kind of gets up at it. Like, and she had commented on him, drinking too much, and he just gets up and he fills his glass and walks out of the room, almost like, yeah, I'm drunk. It's my quarters. I'll get drunk if I want to.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's the end of the scene. And oh my gosh, I was like, all right, this is going to be interesting for the rest of the season.
Yeah. So what are your three?
My three would be Starbuck, Tyrell, and Deanna.
Nice.
So I mean, like anybody didn't see Starbuck being one of mine coming. I mean, for crying out loud. But it's interesting because, and this is going to be, again, this is geekdom and combining with literature. Starbuck actually gets to play Captain Ahab on the Demetrius in Pursuit of Her White Whale. For those of you who don't know, Starbuck being a character in Moby Dick and Ahab and, that whole thing. I have not finished Moby Dick. I got about halfway through.
Great Zeppelin song. Great Zeppelin song.
Yeah, but good Lord, it takes a while to get into that book. I made the mistake of getting the unabridged version.
Mm-hmm.
Holy, dude, 100 pages before you even get on the boat. I am not kidding you. 100
boy.
pages before you get on the boat, and
boy.
then 100 pages after that before you even hear like about the whale.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, I can appreciate taking your time, but damn, I don't know if I have this much time. But anyway, so there's your literature tie-in for there.
Oh, boy.
Tyrell, I actually think that Aaron Douglas might be my favorite actor from this half of the season.
Yes.
And that's saying something, because I think that Callis, I think Katie Sackhoff, I think Eddie Olmos, and even Mary McDonald, certainly. There was so many great performances. Aaron Douglas, though, did so much with Tyrell that to me, just all of a sudden, it kind of summed up his character.
Yeah.
And it's such a complex emotional load from like this rational guy who is dealing with, he finds out he's a Cylon, and he's kind of dealing with it okay. I mean, as well as you're going to find out, they're like, oh, by the way, you're a murder bot. And then he goes to rage, which has always been part of Tyrell's character, which is this kind of like, hey, I'm the happy-go-lucky chief. I might beat you to death with a wrench, though. Like there is that aspect to his character. Then he gets to kind of this resolution of, after Callie's dead, of like, yep, this is who I am. And that's kind of, and then you get to the bemused attachment of Revelation, where he's just shaking his head on the beach like, yep.
Yeah.
Of course this is the way it's going to turn out because I'm involved.
Yeah.
Of course it's going to turn to crap. Of course it is.
One of the best interchanges, real quick, is, and this wasn't an episode that came up for either of us, but in The Road Less Traveled, which was episode 5 of that season, where Baltar, Tyrell happens into the area where Baltar's, sect of believers is gathered for one of his, sermons, and he's talking, and he sees Tyrell, and he makes some statements about Callie that just sends Tyrell just over the edge, like you said. I mean, he just rage is just part of who he is.
Yeah,
and he's justified.
Challenges him.
He's justified in that moment.
Yeah,
because Baltar says a lot of
chokes him
stuff
out.
that he really had no business saying.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, but then that scene, what was it? The next episode where Baltar comes and visits him.
No, it's the end of that one.
Well, no, is it the end of that one?
It's at the end of that one. He comes into his quarters.
And Tyrell's laying there, and he's got the shaved head Private Pile from Full Metal Jacket look going on, which is terrifying.
Yep.
And he's just laying there on his bunk with a gun on his belly, like one hand behind his head, the other hand not close to the gun, but close enough.
Yeah.
and Baltar does this whole thing talking, and all of a sudden you get into this part where Baltar's actually kind of, instead of shucking and jiving, he's actually kind of talking from the heart.
Yes.
And Tyrell is actually ends up taking his hand, which is what Baltar is asking him to do before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's this complex relationship that him and Baltar have, because they were both on Cobol, and Tyrell is the one who shot Crashdown.
Right.
To save Baltar's life.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the web is freaking dense at this point.
Well, and what I liked about that scene was, like you said, I mean, that was a moment where Baltar is being as real as Baltar can be. And he, he apologizes, he admits that he had no business saying those things, that, he's just very sincere. He, shares with him about how, he's made a lot of mistakes, but he's being given a second chance. And it was neat to see, and I love the way how both James Callis and Aaron Douglas played these guys, because there's such an earnestness to what he's saying to Tyrell, and Tyrell is just listening to him, and just reaches his hand out like almost as if to say that's all I wanted. You know what I mean? Like that's all I wanted when you were talking, was just that understanding, because it's less about him preaching to Tyrell now and more about him understanding Tyrell and understanding what he's going, or trying to understand what he's going through, or at least trying to empathize with it. And that's what's just so neat about that. And I'm like, my gosh, for the writers to have the insight to or just the thoughtfulness to even put that into the show was just such a neat effect of just developing those two characters. Like you said, we're seeing with Baltar that, he can shuck and jive, but there's an element that he's starting to come into his own in terms of being more of a real person than he probably ever has been.
Yeah.
And so it's such a neat transformation to see kind of play out.
Yeah, and then we also in this half season we also saw Head Baltar.
Yes.
Which was like, oh my gosh. And of course the funny thing is, like, Head Baltar is not that dissimilar to regular Baltar. So it's almost like it's like having the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other shoulder.
Yeah.
And they're both saying the same thing.
Yes. Yes.
This is not really all that helpful, keeping you on the straight and narrow.
Yes.
And then, of course, the third one being Deanna, where, I mean, she comes back, and she is a loose cannon, because who knows what Deanna's going to do,
Right.
because Deanna was already off the rails before, and nothing's really changed. Like, it's not like she's grown in the time that she's been shut down.
Right.
But it also kind of further conveys, like, that idea of trauma, which you talked about before.
Yeah.
This trauma of resurrection, and that kind of goes back to Cavill, of when he was shot and ended up having to, like, cut himself open on a tire or something like that.
Yeah.
The wheel or something of a truck, and then also when in the episode Faith, when Six ends up having to take out the was it Natalie? I think.
Yes.
It was the Six that had been killed by the colonial. I think it was Fairley,
Mm-hmm.
who she ended up killing in the Raptor, the one that you
Right.
alluded to.
Right.
And oh my gosh, that idea of, like, this trauma carries over, and it goes back to even Scar, where you know that it happens with the Raiders.
Yeah.
Like, as they are reincarnated, resurrected, it hurts.
Right. Right.
And especially, it's something that doesn't get quite resolved.
Correct.
And oh my gosh, and Deanna, kind of that whole thing of, like, why did you bring me back?
Yeah.
Like, one of the first words that she says, and after that, it's just, there's no holds barred. She's just like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and she's back to being Deanna. She's playing this bargaining game where she's like, I know who the final five are. You're going to do everything. You're going to do what I want. We're going to do this. And then I just love how Lee completely plays her.
Yeah,
like, she knows she's hosed once he knows who they are, and he has them in a launch tube. He's like, okay, you want to play hardball? Here we go.
Well, but even then, I mean, she is willing to take out the entire fleet. She's willing to. I mean, she knows that they're all on Galactica.
Yeah.
So she's willing to start taking out civilians, because again, that is where she's at. Right. She is kind of the opposite of Cavill.
Yeah.
Or the counterbalance of Cavill. Another character who's willing to just, okay, if the whole thing burns, then it burns.
Yeah.
I was already dead once.
Yep.
What are you gonna do to me now? You gonna shut me off again?
Right.
All right. But I think she is just such an interesting character. But even when you get to the end of Revelation, and they're showing them all on the beach, she's just as distraught, because it is just gut wrenching, because even she had bought into, all right, this is where we're heading. This is the end game of this whole thing.
Yeah, and the commonality for both sides was hope.
Yeah,
and this was a hope that they both had. The Cylons, when they first initiated the attack on the colonies, wanted to just basically populate those planets and be a part of it and just have their own society. And they were seeking something more. And now, that hope has been just ripped out from underneath them. And so they're just, they're kind of stuck in this bewildered state of what. I mean, all of us, you viewers, the crew, the Cylons, they all just have this look on their face like, what now?
Yeah.
What now?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the goal, and we've essentially reached it. So where do we go from here? Oh man!
And that was a long few months. I remember, between the end of this season and the next season. That was a long time.
Yep.
Long time.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to your top 3 episodes from this half season, sir.
Yes, and these will be quick, because I think we've talked about these ad nauseum. So starting at number 3, I have the episode Faith. That's the one where we have the interaction between, this is where Starbuck finally catches her whale, and so to speak, and has the interaction with the hybrid, where she is told once again that she is the harbinger of death. Nice encouraging word that we all want to hear about ourselves.
Yeah, it's not a resume builder.
Number 2 is the hub. That was in that episode. It was just the leading up to basically the resurrection hub being destroyed, and basically that interaction that I talked about with Baltar and Roslin, and just this fragile alliance that the Cylons and humans endeavor on, ending of course with Adama, basically Adama and Roslin, realizing that with the time they have, they just want to, be with each other, and be with each other in terms of not professionally but personally, and that sort of thing.
Let's
which is cool.
stay together.
That's right.
Loving you and. Anyways,
but
sorry.
of course the big story issue here is the fact that now the Cylons are 100% mortal. They are no longer going to have the ability to resurrect.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge turning point for them, and in some ways now kind of brings them into line with the humans in terms of their mortality and the way they kind of view that. So just seemed like a key episode to me. And then of course we talked about this greatly. Revelations is just the cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers, and just phenomenal episode. You mentioned the Ty Adama interaction, and just seeing Adama just completely break, but yet they get to the goal, and then they just have the rug completely ripped out from underneath them.
So my 3 would have been number 3. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which is the Cylon Colonial team up, and then of course Faith would be number 2, one of yours as well. And I mean, like, you didn't see this one coming. At number 1, He That Believeth in Me.
Yes.
Just because I really I like that episode, and you already took Revelations. So that was how that one got figured.
Nice.
And this is normally the time in a recap of this kind where we would say, here are some things that could be improved upon. Nothing.
Nope.
This show is perfection.
Nope.
And you know what? Tim will fight anyone who disagrees. I won't, because I'm a pacifist, but Tim will.
And by fight, we mean arm wrestle. Best 2 out of 3 falls.
Oh, no, we don't mean that at all. He's got a baseball bat with a railroad spike through it. He'll go Mad Max on you. I'm telling you right now.
Oh.
You don't know. Tim is 6'8", 325 pounds of solid muscle.
What Tim are you talking about?
And another thing.
All right, sir. So what do you have this week for a recommendation for people for and another thing?
Well, if you are a subscriber of Disney Plus, this is another of Tim's. I ask, nay, I implore you to check out a show called Disney Gallery, which is focused on Star Wars: The Mandalorian. We've watched. The family has watched the first 2 episodes. Very behind-the-scenes-y kind of show with Jon Favreau and the list of directors who directed the first season of The Mandalorian. I got to say, I completely understand now why this season went off as well as it did. He assembled what a group of people. Just what a group of people. And, it really speaks to, when we talked about Rise of Skywalker back at the beginning of this year, and the lack of kind of continuity that seemed to be not there across the 3 movies, you can kind of see now why or how important that is. Favreau is kind of the foundation, and he's working with all these directors to coordinate. Dave Filoni is another one who, this guy is kind of like keeping everyone in check. He just brings.
Oh my gosh,
this
his
Star
little
Wars
monologue, towards 2/3 of the way through that second episode, where he kind of goes about the entire arc from episode 1 to episode 6.
Yes, I was going to get to that. Yes, that is, if you are a Star Wars fan, you have got to watch his explanation of connecting Star Wars Episode 1 all the way to 6.
It was almost enough to make me want to go back and watch Phantom Menace. Not quite enough.
I was going to say, I wanted to ask
close.
you if you had watched this, and if you had, does it change your perspective a little bit?
Of Phantom Menace? Yes. Maybe, it's tough to quantify it. Maybe a little bit, a lot of my problems with Phantom Menace were in terms of pacing, in terms of like the stuff that he was talking about is all outside of like, that's the thing, like his comments and praise for Phantom Menace are gloriously outside of the actual main like plot line.
Yep. Yeah.
of the like the actual like kind of like, here's the thing that's happening in the movie. Everything he talked about didn't involve that thing, which is the problem of why it's the reason why a lot of people went to that. I think they call it the machete order. I almost said machete because I've watched the Danny Trejo movies that many times. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen Danny Trejo's Machete, Danny Trejo just turned like 76 or 78, and I would still not mess with that cat. He is a badass. He is a badass. He actually has a documentary coming out about him that will be in another thing for me once I actually see it. But I think it's a reason why you don't have to see this movie.
Yeah.
You don't have to. Like, everything is covered in something else. However, I mean, it does give me a little bit more respect for that final lightsaber duel and for the character of Qui-Gon Jinn.
So admittedly,
but outside of the actual like storyline of the movie, he didn't mention a damn thing about trade federations or anything like that, or any of the like all of the time spent goggling over young Anakin and all this, where the plot didn't move but like 6 inches for the first hour and a half of this abomination. I was trying to think of something clever that wouldn't be a curse word, but I get what he's saying. I get what he's saying, and I do, and I respect so much his perspective because he actually has worked on these things and he's done all that, and I'm far be it from me to say that my opinion is more valid than his. It isn't. It is not. However, it really doesn't change. It changes it a little bit. I'd be willing to go back and rewatch it. However, I know that a lot of the problems I have with that movie are matters of pacing and matters of a weak overall story, that it's like, hey, here's a couple high points that you take and you go on. It's like, dude,
sure.
You set back the rest of the trilogy, and the second and third movies could have been better, but there was so much heavy lifting that had to be done in those 2 movies because you didn't do anything in the first movie to get you.
I mean, admittedly, his comments are really around Qui-Gon and his interaction with Anakin. It's around, he brings up some really interesting points about Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
And
I get all
and
that.
drawing that picture or drawing that line from that. I mean, he's really kind of honed in on the Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan fight scene and drawing.
Interesting that he
there.
focuses on a character who's only in the movie for approximately like 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, and drawing a line from that to Episode 6, and kind of better understanding why things happen the way with Anakin, the way that they did. I mean, he clearly, Dave Filoni clearly, values and understands, I think, the Star Wars universe the way that I think Lucas really is trying to communicate it to his audience. And I think because of that and because of the other directors and their affinity for the series, it really just showed me that, I mean, and I'm assuming this same group is coming back for season 2, these directors.
I don't know. I would guess that they might, but I'm guessing that there probably will be some new blood.
Could be.
I would think.
Could be. But, I mean, at the same time, they seem to have a really good formula with these guys. And it would be I just feel like season 2 is in good hands. I think I like the way that it's being handled. I like that it isn't, Jon Favreau trying to, run the show, where he's doing it all. And he says it himself. I mean, he wants to assemble a group of people who understand, who are Star Wars fans, who understand what they like about it, and to try to bring that to life on screen. And they were wildly successful in doing so with season 1. So I'm looking forward to season 2. In my closing, I'll have one more little nugget about that. But yeah, just if you have an opportunity, I'm assuming there's going to be a few more episodes of this. I haven't checked Disney Plus over the last couple of days, but if there are some more episodes, do check it out. But episodes 1 and 2 are fantastic. So Disney Gallery, Star Wars, The Mandalorian.
I'm pretty sure episode 3 premiered over this weekend. I'm not sure exactly when it was released.
Okay.
Me and the kid just watched I'm sorry, me and the teen just watched episode 2 tonight, and it was really great.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. However, to get back to your point, I was able to fact check this in real time, as opposed to normally when I'm just like, I'll do it later. So the season 2 directors for The Mandalorian have been released. We actually know. So Rick I'm gonna mess this.
I know
guy's
who you're
name up,
talking about.
Famuyiwa.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry in advance, Rick. With my last name, I should do better at this. So Rick, Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni are all coming back.
Mm-hmm.
However, after that, we get some new blood. So we get Robert Rodriguez,
Ooh.
who directed and wrote Machete. So maybe we get. Oh my gosh! If we got a Danny Trejo. Oh, if Danny Trejo was in Star Wars, I could die a happy man. And then after that, we got Peyton Reed,
Mm-hmm.
who directed Marvel's Ant-Man movie, and then Carl Weathers is also expected to direct an episode of Mandalorian season 2.
Directing a Mandalorian episode sounds like a damn monster movie.
Oh, you beat me to it.
No, you got to do it. You own that.
No,
you do it, please.
No, you already beat me to it. I'm not doing it. No, I refuse.
Okay.
I refuse. However, I will wholeheartedly endorse and co-sign on Disney Gallery Star Wars. It is fantastic, especially for a geek like me. And it was great because we watched my daughter and I watched the first episode,
Mm-hmm.
and she was kind of like, I could tell she was humoring me.
Yeah.
You know, because I am the geek who watches all of the DVD extra materials. I love director commentaries. There's movies I've watched with the director commentary on more than I have with it off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm that guy. I am that guy. I'm the reason why I'm the person who buys the special edition DVDs, because it has one more thing on it than normal DVD.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but watching this episode, she was actually really into it. Like, and the second episode was on Legacy of Star Wars, and it's going through, and she's starting to ask. She was asking questions, and I'm like, well, you know, there's actually this other thing, and this. I'm going to switch out my another thing because this dovetails into it. If you have Disney Plus, and I didn't realize this was on Disney Plus until I was just flipping through, but I had the old school DVD box set with the original trilogy, and it had episodes 4 through 6, and then it also had your bonus disc, which was a couple of different documentaries. However, the documentary that I am going to recommend for my another thing is called Empire of Dreams.
Oh yes.
And it is the documentary about the making of the original Star Wars trilogy.
Uh-huh.
And it goes into Lucas's kind of early career and his development of the Star Wars story and getting it at a studio and all these things, and then carries you through all 3 original movies. And as we're watching this, I'm like, well, there is a documentary about the making of Star Wars that explains a lot of the questions that you're asking.
Yeah.
And she kind of was like, I was like, oh yes, my young apprentice. My wife could care less about documentaries and stuff
through you.
Oh yeah. So I was like, oh, you want to watch a documentary with Dad? Oh, we can totally do that.
Oh, let's get the crackers and cheese, baby.
Oh yeah. Oh, you know it. But Empire of Dreams is a fantastic documentary, and it is one of those reasons. Like I have downed George Lucas for some things over the years, and I will admit, and I rag on Phantom Menace and all that. But man, you know what? George Lucas has given a lot to my childhood and adult life. Like you start thinking about all of, Industrial Light and Magic doesn't happen without George Lucas.
Yeah.
And think about all of the movies that ILM has worked on. Like they were talking about in episode 2 of the Mandalorian Gallery about Jurassic Park. They threw that in. I'm like, of course Jurassic Park went through ILM.
Yeah.
And of course this movie that I love had effects done by ILM. Like, of course they're on the cutting edge of this. Of course, like I mean, like they're talking about like how Edit Droid became Avid and all that. It's like, well, yeah, George Lucas wasn't in there like, hey, I'm going to program this thing, and he wasn't doing that, but it's his work that funded that and that kind of begat that.
Yeah.
So I mean, in some way, he gets credit for that. Like the way that we make movies now is fundamentally different from how they made movies before because of George Lucas.
Yeah.
And watching this, it's really cool to watch someone go through that process and achieve something that is, out of their head, that is out of their dreams.
Yeah.
And see it actually come to fruition. Like this whole idea of like, again, in that episode, they're talking about these are all characters that sprang from the imagination of George Lucas. So you kind of have to go back and you're like, okay, well, George, what were you talking about? And seeing all of that come out of the mind of one guy, is really cool, and it is.
Well, and I watched the last couple of episodes of the last season of Clone Wars with my younger one, and as we were watching them, but I basically watched the second to last episode and the last episode with him. And I'd watched the first couple seasons with them, so I had kind of an idea of the characters and stuff. There was some, backstory I was clearly missing, but I just was absorbing it. And, as I'm sitting there watching it, I keep coming back to the fact that it amazes me. And I think this is one of the reasons why I have such an affection for this franchise. It just amazes me that from, like you were just saying, from the mind of one man came this entire separate universe. That so many people have, whether they're writers or directors, and I don't mean writers in terms of TV or movie writing. I mean like book authors who have just taken it in so many different directions. And I'm like, how cool is it that this is what he created? That he created something that has allowed other people to be as creative building on top of it. It's just incredible to me. I mean, we have the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, but those are kind of contained into what Tolkien wrote about. I mean, there isn't anyone writing about the further adventures of those characters. And it's just kind of neat that he's created this universe where you're not necessarily expanding about Luke and Han and Leia or anything like that, but with the Mandalorian, you're just taking a character and a culture or a creed of sorts. And now running with that and taking some of the history that has been established by other writers along for the ride. And I just think that's just such a neat aspect of what he's created.
This is the way.
Yeah, and it goes back to even something that Rick, oh my gosh, I don't even want to say his name because I'm going to mess it up and I'm going to feel horrible about it. But one of the directors of The Mandalorian Season 1, where he talks about even getting a chance to, like, with his action figures, continue the story. Like, it was that sort of thing. Like, it was, and that is one of the things that in the Empire Dreams documentary where George Lucas had talked with Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell is the guy who's written about the hero's journey and the idea of hero and myth and story and how this is a universal concept throughout culture and throughout humanity. And at one point, the one quote that stand out, I wish I could remember who said it, but had said that Joseph Campbell said that his greatest student was George Lucas.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because he sat in a class or anything like that, but he read through the story, he read through his information and was like, oh, this is how you do it.
This is the way.
And gave us this universe where all these things could happen and the hero's journey could play out in such a way that you could take it in any direction you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Like it provided such a fertile field for your imagination that you just wanted the story to continue. Like I joke about wanting Battlestar Galactica to be 20 seasons long.
Yeah.
You know, but it was the type of thing with Star Wars where it becomes this expandable universe.
Yeah.
And it is remarkable that could happen, and it is wonderful.
Yeah, and
it
and
is
BSG,
literally full of wonder.
Yeah, and BSG, is about the journey, and when they get to the end of the journey, that kind of closes the story a bit, and it's just, like I said, it's just so amazing to me that you take a story like The Mandalorian, which is set a few years after Return of the Jedi, and it factors in the implications of the ruins of the Empire. It factors in the implications of the political structure at that time and just all this other, it's so neat to see how they can just expand upon it. It doesn't just begin and end with the Skywalkers. It goes beyond it. And I think that is that is the part that I think is going to allow that franchise to endure, as long as it's in the hands of people who understand the value of what, the spirit of what Lucas was trying to do in that hero's journey. I think as long as you stay to that core, and I think they said that in some point in that episode too, that George's message to them was always leave them with hope.
This is the way.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. Filoni, like that entire thing, like even if you don't care about Star Wars, but if you have Disney Plus, go to the Star Wars section, go to the Mandalorian gallery, episode 2, and about halfway to 2/3 of the way through, look for the guy in the cowboy hat talking. He's going to be talking for a while, but you will listen to that. And I love how after he finished, like, I'm sorry to ramble on, and Bryce Dallas Howard's like, I have goosebumps from what you were saying. Yeah. I mean, it was oh my gosh, it really does sum up, and it's this reverential feeling that you get from people who they genuinely love this material. They love these characters as if they were their own.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's also why I give a pass for The Last Jedi. Is I don't think that Rian Johnson doesn't hold these in reverence. I think he was, I think there's a whole other thing. I don't feel like it was dismissive of those characters. I think he was trying to do something because it was out of reverence. He was trying to take that further, and I can respect that. I think that's the reason why I can respect that, because I do feel there was a reverence there. It wasn't just a complete like, screw all this stuff that came before.
Yeah.
It was a reverential treatment. That's what I feel. And you know what? Anyone who disagrees with me can fight Tim.
Dead rat.
So here we are at the end of the show. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate it. Again, follow us on social media, YouTube.
Sigh.
Paging Saul Ty. Paging Saul Psy.
Also known as Psy.
Psy my. Psy fi. Fee fi. Fo fum.
Anyways, so we appreciate y'all listening in. Feel free to subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. We are not picky whatsoever. It's at this point in the evening or the day. Well, it's evening when we're recording this, so let's go with the evening. It's at this point in the evening and the show when I turn to the less idiotic portion of the idiots who run this show and say, sir, take me home.
Well, my friend, we've been on all sorts of twists and turns, talking about BSG, talking about Star Wars. I love the fact when those two worlds can come together in some small way. I'm looking forward. Last week it was announced Miss Katie Sackhoff will be coming to The Mandalorian as Bo-Katan. And that is going to be fantastic.
I'm getting the vapors. Just mention. I knew it was happening. I need a ginger ale right now.
Starbug will be entering into Star Wars, and so it'll be good to see her and I saw like a side-by-side picture of what Bo-Katan looked like in Clone Wars and what and Miss Katie Sackhoff, and my gosh, good casting there.
So we got Katie Sackhoff, we got Rosario Dawson, and we got the original dude who played Boba Fett.
And we
Boba
got
Fett's
Timothy Oliphant, who is also going to play some unnamed character. So he is whatever he is in is always enhanced by his presence. So,
and you know what's good to know? All this stuff happened before COVID, so we're in post-production now.
Mm-hmm.
So we are definitely getting Mandalorian Season 2.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
So, folks,
I didn't need more disappointment in my life.
So, folks, with all that good news, with all that, as Dave Filoni put it, as George told them, leave them with hope. We leave you with this. For the kids, as you're wrapping up the school, get ready, parents. It's going to be a long summer.
Which is kind of like, the last few months anyway. So you've had time to prep.
Oh, week 10 of lockdown, baby. Week 10. Here we go. But, as always, folks, be safe, be healthy, and please, we beg of you, hit the lights on the way out.
This is the way.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
I beg your pardon. What did you say?
Damn!
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
So say we all.
So say we all.
I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It just needs to be said. After a BSG episode, I need a nap.